All right, guys. Our next guest is loved for his ninja skills and for being one of the nicest guys in the game. He's making his return to the packed UFC 217. He takes on Jorge Masvidal in a super exciting fight. Fans can't wait to see. It's a pleasure to welcome Stephen Wonderboy Thompson back to Submission Radio, live from a wedding. Stephen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Been working on my ninja skills, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. And may I just ask, whose wedding are you at, and how are you crazy enough to take an interview, or kind enough, I should say, to take an interview with us while you're at a wedding? You're not like in the best man's party or anything, are you?
No, not at all. Actually, it's one of my brother's football buddies.
Wow.
My brother's wife had another wedding to go to, so I'm pretty much his date for the weekend. So he invited me. We're here. So it's all good, my friend. And I always like hanging out with you guys and talking with y'all. So it's all good, brother.
Well, we also noticed on Instagram you've been spending a little bit of time at some modeling events, some big fashion events. And we know a chiseled jaw is one of Wonderboy's many qualities. So what was it like? And does this mean we might be seeing you doing modeling as well?
Yeah, I was actually in New York City for UFC 205 with Chris Weidman. We did a photo shoot for Gotham magazine, and there was people there with the largest modeling company in the world called IMG. They asked me if I would like to do some modeling. I was like, you know what? I'm 34 years old, not really sure what you're going to do with me, but why not? Sure. So I literally just signed with them about 2 months ago. They brought me out to Fashion Week in New York City a few weeks ago, and it's a huge, it's different, different in the spectrum from fighting to fashion. To be honest with you, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just along for the ride. So it's a lot of fun.
What are you expecting from this, Stephen? It's funny how you mentioned the Gotham shoot, because whenever we go on Getty Images to use images like for this interview and for thumbnails, we see there's like a whole bunch of pictures of you and Chris Weidman, and it's, obviously a cut above the usual images that you see for UFC fighters. But like, what are you expecting from this? Is this something you're hoping to do sort of every few months? Can you make some serious money out of it? What are you hoping for here?
Yeah, it's just something that the UFC and MMA has kind of dropped into my lap, to be honest with you, through the fighting, just a different revenue, along with, doing some analyzing with Fox. It's just something different, something to kind of dabble in and to kind of, have fun with when I don't have a fight coming up. So yeah, man, I mean, a lot of guys can make some really good money through modeling. And so, to be honest with you, I've never done it before, and it just sounds like a lot of fun, and it's just something new to do, something different. Like I said before, it's just totally different in the spectrum, going from fighting to fashion. But to be honest with you, it's kind of in one and the same. I mean, in the UFC, you got some guys like Conor McGregor, who's kind of molded those two together, the fighting and the fashion. He's got such a really cool persona when it comes to fashion. I mean, he's sponsored by Gucci and all these other companies. And so you're starting to see that a little bit more in the UFC. You got Alan Jabon, who's also modeling as well. So I was like, sure, man, why not? Let's do this.
And of course, when one becomes a model, they must learn the basics. So the big question here is, how many times have you watched Zoolander to get that blue steel look up to scratch?
Oh man, I've been working on it, man. I've been working on it. They told me, hey, you got to work on that blue steel look. I don't even know what that means, but I've been doing something in it. Hopefully it works. But had my first photo shoot a week ago with a guy named Bruce Weber, who's one of the top photographers in the world, and it was a lot of fun, very interesting. So of course, in the fashion, they like to try and push the limits a little bit. They like to, of course, the less that you wear, the better off the picture's going to be. Of course, I'm used to wearing practically nothing in the cage anyway. So,
this wasn't a nude shoot, was it, Stephen?
No. Definitely can't do that. I got 600 kids back home watching every move I make. I can't be doing some nudes, but, I had to say no to that.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least they're offered. I mean, shit. I wish we would get offered, nude shoots. I'd take it as a compliment. Before we talk fighting, obviously you were also on the set of Jurassic Park 2. Talk to us about that. What was it like being on the set? And obviously Chris Pratt, we know he's obviously a big MMA fan. He was, big into wrestling in college. Did you get a chance to speak to him? And what was that all like?
I wish that it was literally right directly after the entire cast had went home. So we were there in Hawaii for vacation, actually. Yeah, no, I would love to meet Miss Chris Pratt. I'm a huge fan of him. I love his movies. He's a very funny guy, but didn't get to meet him. But we were actually on set of Jurassic Park 2. I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. Being in theaters for the very first Jurassic Park back in the early 90s. And so it was cool to actually be on set. It was actually in Hawaii, in Honolulu. And man, it's a beautiful place. And not only did they do Jurassic Park 2, they did the very Jurassic World 2, but they did the very first Jurassic Park there. They did Godzilla. They did all kinds of other movie sets on this site. So it was cool to actually go around and tour the island and see. And I can kind of go back and picture the movie and remember, what I'm seeing actually in real life and seeing that in the movie. So it was cool actually being there. So it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to get into the producer's ear and to maybe include a karate dinosaur in the sequel to spice things up a little bit and maybe bring in a few bucks at the box office?
Right. I said, like, listen, man, you need somebody out there to like roundhouse one of these dinosaurs in the face, at least once. I'm your guy, put me in there. So he wasn't having it. He was like, get out of here. I don't even know who you are. So don't talk to me.
And then you roundhouse him in the head, and then he got you away anyway. That's the way that story ends, right? Let's talk.
I did. And as soon as he said that, I poked him. I didn't even bother roundhouse you. I just poked him in the eye. That was it.
Well, that's nice. All right. Before we even talk about your fight, obviously UFC 217, just want to get your sort of read on the division because welterweight's kind of booming. It always has been, but you got all these new guys. There's no real clear-cut contender for Tyron Woodley. You got Robbie Lawler in the mix, but then you got RDA, and he's making his presence felt. And now Carlos Condit is returning. He's fighting Neil Magny. Obviously, Condit being a guy that you wanted to fight for a while. You got Masvidal instead, but in your opinion, where does he fit in? Condit coming back after this time, and also RDA.
RDA is, of course, he was the champion in the 155 division. He's moved up to 170, but he's a huge name. So, he's a phenomenal fighter. He's been doing well in the 170 division. Being Saffordine, which I was there actually ring cage side watching that fight, which is very impressive. And of course, his last win. So, I'm pretty sure he's ranked pretty high right now in the top 5 or 6. So it's really cool to see where he's, and this is what makes the 170 division so exciting because you don't know what's going to happen. And it's kind of up in the air right now. Me and Robbie Lawler going back and forth with the number one seed. I'm number 1 seed, and he's number 1 seed, and we're both number 1 seed, and he's back to number 1 seed. And you got all these ridiculous fighters coming up. You got Mount Perry doing work, finishing dudes in the 170 division. You got Carlos Condit coming back, fighting Neil Magny. And of course, Robbie Lawler, who's a monster, coming over a win off of, Cowboy Cerrone. So, it's very exciting is right now in the 170 division. So, man, I got a bunch of guys, a lot of studying to do because I can be facing any one of these guys in the near future. So I'm watching everyone very closely, which is exciting for me, and a lot of these guys are stand-up fighters, obviously. Jorge Masvidal is known for his striking, his Muay Thai. He's very well-rounded if people don't understand. They haven't gone back and watched some of his fights. His fights against Paul Daly at Bellator, he out-wrestled him. If you watch his fight with Damian Maia, his grappling is very good. So, man, I'm ready for fireworks come November 4th.
And in terms of Condit coming back, are you a little bit disappointed that he didn't come back a little bit earlier and you didn't get an opportunity to fight him rather than fighting Masvidal?
I'm really not disappointed. I kind of understand why. He's been in some battles, some wars in the 170 division, fighting George St-Pierre. His fight with Robbie Lawler was just epic, which was his last fight. It took some time off to heal up and to kind of regain that fire, that flame, which some fighters kind of lose as they get very close to that title shot and don't make it. It's kind of understandable. He's a very talented fighter, so it does make sense that he took some time off to recoup, to replenish that fire that's in him, that to get out there and fight in the octagon, and just to heal up. He's been fighting for a very long time, so it's very exciting to see him come back and fight Neil Magny, and hopefully, one of these days we'll be facing off in the octagon. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a matchup that'd definitely be a treat. UFC 217, obviously a massive, massive stacked card. GSP headline against Michael Bisping, your good friend GSP, and you and Jorge Masvidal. It's an interesting fight because it's a fight between, two top contenders. And, GSP obviously said that if he loses against Bisping later on in the night after you fight, he'll retire. But it's uncertain what's next if he does win. How would you sort of react if he got the shot, against Tyron Woodley next and sort of delayed your possible third shot at the title? Because, obviously a win over Jorge, might get you close there.
Yeah, man. Obviously, a win over Jorge Masvidal will keep you in that top, contender for that title shot. Up there with Robbie Lawler. But I'm focused on him. I'm all my mind is set on fighting this fight November 4th. That said, Tyron Woodley is out for a little while. Not really sure how long he's going to be out for. He's got a shoulder injury. If George St-Pierre does win this fight, he may come down to face Tyron Woodley. I think he's coming back for those money fights, which is understandable. He's one of the best guys who ever stepped out in the division. He's actually my inspiration to come to mixed martial arts. He's a good friend of mine. So I wish him the best of luck, and I hope he goes out there and does work the same night. And it's great to actually be on the same card as him. One of the best who ever stepped out there. I've always wanted to fight on the same card as George St-Pierre, and this is my opportunity to do so. So I got to go out there and do work against Jorge Masvidal. But not really sure where he's going to go. Is he going to continue to stay at the 185 division? Is he going to come down to 170? I know there was talk about him fighting Conor McGregor. So I don't know where it's going to go, where his mind is. I haven't talked to him recently to find that out. But it's going to be fun, man. I just tell you, man. And this next year is going to have some really good fights coming up, and hopefully I'll be a part of that.
And obviously, he's always been a friend of Renzo Gracie and John Danaher, the team down in New York. I'm just wondering, down towards the end of your training camp, is there any chance that you guys will be training together leading into UFC 217 at all?
I hope so. I know he's doing George St-Pierre is doing a lot of karate training. He has his own gym in Montreal, Canada. It does still work with Faraz Zahabi, but I understand that George has his own gym, so he's bringing in a lot of karate guys. He's always been a good fan of the karate style. Being a karate stylist himself, Kyokushin. So that would be really fun, man. I would love to go to Montreal to work with George St-Pierre together to get ready for this fight November 4th. Not only that, but Faraz Zahabi's little brother, Ayman Zahabi, who's one of my good friends and very respectful, very honorable guy, who's going to be fighting on the same card on the undercard. So it's going to be fun to be able to fight out there with family, and I consider those guys family because I've known them for so long and learned so much from those guys. So it would be fun, man. I would love to go out and train with George St-Pierre.
Well, it'd be great if that happened leading into the event. And looking at this fight between you and Jorge and sort of talking about the stakes, you're sort of in this tough position because you've already had 2 shots at the belt. If you do beat Masvidal, what are your expectations from the UFC? And has anybody sort of told you or given you the impression that, you might not or you won't get the title shot even if you beat Masvidal convincingly at 217?
I haven't really talked to anybody about that with the UFC. The only thing that I know that I'm facing off against Jorge Masvidal, but what I believe I have to do come November 4th is to be able to stay for that title contention, to be able to fight for the title is put on a good show, and put out a good W, an exciting W come November 4th against Jorge Masvidal. We've been kind of going back and forth with me and Robbie Lawler. I was ranked number 1, then he's number 1, then we're both number 1. So hopefully a good win over this. I don't understand that Tyron's out for a little while. So hopefully we'll be able to fight against Robbie Lawler, maybe for an interim welterweight title against him for that belt. There's also word that RDL want him to fight for the title too. So, I really don't know. I got to go out there and face George first and see what happens there before I can think about really what's going on next. But it is in the back of my mind.
Well, talk to us about Masvidal, because even though he's known for being a bit of a trash talker, it seems like he has a lot of respect for you and your fight style. How have you found being around him thus far? And are you ready for him to possibly fire up during fight week and bring his trash talking out when it comes to media days and stare downs?
Yeah, man, definitely. That's his game, and And that's why they call him game bred, man. He's always game whenever he steps out there in the octagon, no matter who he faces. He's a tough opponent, man. He's got great strike, as you saw against Cowboy Cerrone. Finish him. I thought it should have been finished in the first round, but I ended up finishing him in the second round, early in the second. Man, his striking's very good. I have a lot of respect for him, but he's out there to take my spot. He's out there to beat me, and I can't let that happen. I do expect him to go out there and talk a little trash, but we both have respect for one another. We did some talking with each other to try and get this fight happening while I was on the injured list. I was out there in Singapore and in Brazil, and a lot of the fights in Buffalo, New York, and we ended up meeting up and talked about getting this fight happening. And it all started on social media, after his loss against Damian Maia. He was looking for a fight. I know he was trying to get a fight with Neil Magny. That didn't happen. So he said, hey, Wonderboy, let's make this thing happen. Of course, I was on the injury list, but I was like, I would love to fight you. You're ranked number 4. You're in the top 5. Let's do this. So thanks to him, we got this fight going. So, man, it's pretty cool, seeing the fans for UFC 217 talking about our fight more than the other fights on the main card. So a lot of fans are more excited about our fight than anything else. So we both have a responsibility to go out there and just really put on a show, man. And unlike Tyron, this guy comes forward. He comes to fight, and, it's got fireworks written all over it. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this fight's a treat. Obviously, 2 technical strikers. Just sort of weighing on Masvidal's striking. Obviously, it's probably his more dominant part of his game, even though he's a well-rounded guy. But when you look at his striking style, how do you assess it? And do you sort of see any holes that you could exploit?
Well, don't want to put anything out there. He's
Sure.
probably got guys listening to the podcast.
Of course.
But, he's got great Muay Thai stylists, and his clinch work is one of the best. I mean, he's one of the guys that goes out there and he just brings it, man. And he defeats a lot of his guys because he is a very tough opponent, and it just outworks him. His cardio, he's got cardio for days. He's been a 155er, so he's not a very big 170, but he's got cardio for days, and he breaks a lot of his guys because of that. His clinch work is one of the top guys, is top in the welterweight division, probably in the UFC. And I haven't seen anybody better in his clinch than Anderson Silva is known for that. So he's got great knees and great elbows. I think he's going to press forward like he normally does, and tries to get me in that clinch. Maybe try and take me down here and there, because usually everybody tries to do that against me. But he's very well rounded, so I got to be on point every step of the way when I step out there against him November 4th. And I've been working religiously on my wrestling and my jiu-jitsu. So just in case the fight goes there, I'm ready for wherever it goes.
And from the sounds of your recent interviews and from what you're saying here is you're really looking to make a big statement in this fight. You've even said that you expect this fight to be a bit of a brawl. And Jorge has claimed that he doesn't believe you when you say that because you're more of a calculated technical striker than a brawler. So is it true that you're sort of expecting more of a brawl, and will we be seeing a different side of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in this fight?
I always go out there, being aware of what my opponent's going to do. So I'm not going to put myself in a dangerous situation where I could possibly get knocked out. Nobody likes getting hit. I don't like getting hit. So, but you're going to see more of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. You saw my last 2 fights against Tyron. I love it when guys come forward, which is something you didn't see during the Tyron Woodley fight, but that's just the way Masvidal is. He comes walking forward. He's not afraid to press the action, which enables me to be able to use my arsenal a little bit better, to use my kicks, to use my angles. So, yeah, man, you're going to see a more exciting fight from me November 4th. And I know Jorge Masvidal is itching at the bit to get out there and do the same. So, it's going to be fun, man. And that's why I do what I do, to go out there and fight the best guys in the world. And he's definitely one of them.
And of course, this will be your second time fighting in Madison Square Garden, something that a lot of fighters never really experience, and here you will be going in there another time. But what are you feeling about fighting there again? And is this different? Is this sort of a relief that you're not in the co-main spot? Obviously, fans really excited for this one, but you don't have, the same kind of promotion. There's not as much spotlight. Is it a bit of a relief, or is it kind of, I guess, similar? Because there you had Weidman fighting, and here you have your friend in George St-Pierre.
It is kind of a relief to me. Going into that fight, Madison Square Garden was the very first one there. There was a lot of media obligations that we had to go through, for that. This time, I'm not the main event. We are the first fight on the pay-per-view card, but you don't have all the media obligations anymore. So we can just literally focus on the fight. And it's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to face Jorge Masvidal in Madison Square Garden in New York City, because it's a home away from home. I spend a lot of time there anyway, but just to be back there and put on another show in front of the fans. My last fight there was I fought a draw. We got fight of the night for that fight. So going back there and getting a W in my home away from home would just be unbelievable. So I'm training literally as hard as I can for this fight to be able to put on a great performance for everybody in New York City. And it is different from the last one because I can just go out there and focus on the fight and not have to worry about the media stuff that comes along with it.
Well, Stephen, as we wrap up, because we don't want you to miss out on your wedding mains. That's usually the best part of a wedding reception, the mains. Yeah. And I hope that somebody didn't switch out your meat one with a vegetarian one, because that also always happens at weddings. When you turn around, someone switches out your meals. But so we want to avoid that. So to do that, we're going to wrap up. But while we do that, we want to get your prediction for this fight: UFC 217, Madison Square Garden, you versus Masvidal, and a very fan-friendly matchup that everybody's looking forward to. How do you see yourself winning?
Every time I visualize a fight, I never visualize a knockout. I always visualize my hand raised at the very end. Going out there and putting on a show for everybody who's going to be tuned in to watch or there live, just to expect a very good, exciting fight from me and Jorge Masvidal with my hand raised at the very end. So hopefully everybody tunes in and watches the fight November 4th.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Everybody's going to be tuning in America and Australia, all over the world. Of course, if you don't know, the fight takes place on November 4th. It's going to be November 5th here in Australia. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Jorge Masvidal at UFC 217 in Madison Square Garden in New York City. Stephen, we'll let you go. We'll let you get back to the wedding. We're imagining something along the lines of Wedding Crashers. I don't know whether you'd be more Vince Vaughn or Owen Wilson, but I feel like we'll find out. We'll see the pictures on Instagram. Of course, that's going to be at Wonderboy MMA, and you can check him out on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for chatting with us. Always appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend, and I just want to thank you for having me on and showing all the love for all my Australian friends. So thank you very much for having me on, brother.